All right, so welcome to HMIS Office Hours. The topic of this office hours is resolving data quality errors. So we just finished up quarter one, and as you know, most of you who are on this call know, we've been asking you guys to submit those data quality reports. They should be being run regularly anyway. And so what we're going to go through today is some of the most common errors that we've seen so far. That are maybe not always obvious of how you resolve that error or what the system, why the system is even showing that error and how we resolve that. So really quickly, just wanted to, where's my mouse? There we go. Introduce our team. Hopefully most of you guys are familiar with us, but I'm pretty sure most or all of us are going to be on the call today. So we're going to be here taking turns presenting and answering your questions. Let's see. Like I said, the topics we're going to cover, first we're actually going to go into how to run, download, and read these data quality reports. So if you're not sure exactly how to run the report or how to read the report to see what the errors are, we're going to go through that. No need to worry. Then I've got a list here of some common errors that we're going to go through based on, like I said, just the things that we've seen coming in so far from quarter one. And then if there's any other scenarios that you want to see if we have time, which I'm thinking we will, any type of issue that you saw that's been really common for you or that you weren't able to resolve so far that doesn't fall under one of these ones that we're presenting on, let us know. And if we can cover it today, we will. Or otherwise, you can submit a SpiceWorks ticket. We might ask that you do that if the error can't quickly be like shown on the call. And then obviously we'll do Q&A. We can kind of do questions throughout or at the end, either way, but I'm assuming there will be time at the end specifically for you guys to ask your questions and have some review. I will ask before you leave the meeting today that you sign in for office hours. So I'm going to put the sign in link in the chat. Give me just one moment to grab it. And that way we have record that you attended, and also you'll get a little form that says you attended office hours, and then there's another link that I'm sending in the chat as well. That's just a feedback form. So that feedback form is anonymous. You can use that to let us know what you liked about office hours, what you didn't. We like the feedback, positive or negative, because it helps us better tailor our content and our trainings to you, and that's our job. So let's jump right into running the data quality report. And really this slideshow, I'm gonna hop away from this now. I made these slides so that you could have this handout later. So just so you're aware, at the end of the call, you will get the handout that has just these really brief steps, although we do have a cheat sheet on our website as well that has the steps in detail with screenshots and all of that. And that can be found on the training resources page of our website if you need that cheat sheet. Let me pull my password for the training site here. And all the data we're going to show today is just training data. So we're okay to record this. We're not going to put any client data on the screen. But I'm going to log into the training site, and I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up what I've done to prepare for our call today is run a few data quality reports and kind of preloaded some of this data into the system for us. And the first one that we're going to look at is this data quality report. I had to run it for a street outreach program, so I just chose one from the bridge. But what we're going to do, give me just a moment. I'm sorry, I'm getting so far ahead of myself, y'all. We're not going to look at the report yet. We're going to run it. We're going to run it. So to get over to the data quality report, first we need to go to our reports workspace, right? So I'm going to navigate over to my reports workspace. And from there, I need to click on HMIS reports, and then I have my HUD data quality report. Once you open the HUD data quality report, you will need to give the report a few settings or filters so that the system knows exactly what you want to see. Here at the top of the page, and actually at the top of most of these pages, there's an option to save your report settings. So you can see that I was running several different versions of this and got some saved today. You can, once you do have a setting saved, all you do is click on that setting to have it, pre-populate down here in the bottom. Or if you, I can delete that one because there's so many of those. If you want to make some settings and then save them, then you'll click Save Settings here and give that report some sort of name. So we can just give it a test name there. And then once I run this report, the settings that I choose will be saved. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a date range for my report, and let's just do first quarter. I do want to scroll down here and make sure that my organization is selected correctly. So this actually has pre-populated that saved report that I pulled earlier. I'm going to change that and make sure that I'm on MDHA training. You should only see your organization here, but because I'm in training, of course, we have all those organizations loaded. I'm not going to bother filtering by grant, but I do need to filter by program. So this box may not be checked when you come to this page, but you'll check that box, filter by program. And I have some, because I had that report setting up here, I just wanted to see street outreach to make it a little easier to find my program. I can choose a program type. So I'm actually looking for an emergency shelter. I can filter there. And then I'm going to scroll down on my list until I see HMIS training emergency shelter. That's the one I want to select.
Megan, sorry, one moment. Let me step in for a second. You all, the program type, I would suggest you leaving it blank. I've had a lot of issues with people accidentally selecting a program type. So maybe they select a safe haven or a permanent supportive housing, and then all of their other programs do not come up. So they think that they don't have the access. So please, because you guys aren't going to have like tons like we do where we need to filter through, I would suggest, Megan, that you all just leave that program type as blank so that you're able to see all of your programs regardless of the type.
Thanks, Hartfield. That's a really good point. It pre-populated for me because I was using those settings, but you're right. As you select these, some of the other programs will go away. So you will see everything here if you just leave it blank, and that's probably the best way to make sure you're not missing anything. So what I was doing while Hartfield was talking was going in and deselecting that Bridge Street Outreach program. One thing to note is that you can select multiple programs here. If you're running this just for internal purposes, you can run them for all your programs at once if you want to, but when you submit your reports to us, we ask that you run them for one program at a time. So you will want to make sure that only one program is selected. And then when you scroll down, we have two different options for running this report. I have a Run Export button down here at the bottom of the screen, and I also have a Report button or a Schedule report. These two do the same thing. This one, the scheduling just asks the system to wait and run it later. The Report button will run it right away. So when I just click Report, I'm going to be given an overview, kind of an aggregate of all this data. There's no client level information when I just click this report button down here at the bottom of the screen. And you can see here that it shows me the time range, the date range that I've selected for this report, the organization that I'm running it under, and the program that I've run this report for. And then down here, like I said, we just have kind of an overview. There's no client level information on this report right now. There are two pages to this report, so I can click the arrow here to see the other page. There are several different questions that we're going to look at for data quality. And to save this report, you use the little floppy disk button here and click the arrow and choose PDF. So when we do that, your computer may open a browser window for a brief moment while it's downloading. There it's going to close again, and then it'll download my data quality report and open it up for me. So now I have a PDF version of this saved on my computer. This is the report that we're asking you to turn in to us. So when you run that quarterly report and you're submitting that via your ticket, this PDF is the one that we want to see. And what we're looking for is no errors or as little errors as possible, right? So if I scroll down, well, first of all, at the top, we have some information about number of persons served in the program and some different demographic information for them. Q2 is going to be some just basic information about your client. So name, social security number, date of birth, race, ethnicity, gender, and it'll tell you whether or not that has been marked as client doesn't know or client refused, whether that information is missing or whether there's any issues with that data. So missing information would be if you recorded data not collected for that data element. I think I have an example of one later where I recorded data not collected for social security number, so we'll see one there. Of course, you would see a number here of clients that if the client didn't know or the client refused that information, you would see numbers there counting the total number of clients who had that recorded. And data issues might occur if there's partial information or information that the system just flags as potentially being inaccurate. So for example, Social Security number, if the Social Security number is recorded as a partial Social Security number, or if it is looking like it could be a duplicate of another Social Security number in the system will flag that as an error and ask you to take a look at that to confirm that it's accurate. So those are some reasons why you might see numbers in those data issues column as clients that have that going on their record. Question 3, universal data elements. So again, we'll see errors here if this data is not recorded or if the system is flagging some other sort of error. It looks like we have one error here for disabling condition, but veteran status, project entry, relationship to head of household, location, and disabling condition are all in Q3. Q4 is income and housing data, and we see a lot of errors here. So you're going to see in just a moment, we have a few errors that we're going to look at in this section Q4, but this is where if you record an exit destination, it will show here income sources at start, at the annual assessment, and at exit. And you'll see errors there if the clients have any errors in their data at those points. There's information here about chronicity. So you get a total count of records and then counts for, whether any of these data elements are didn't know or refused or missing. So it looks like here we have number of times homeless, either the client didn't know, they refused, or that data element is missing. And if we had other errors, they would show here as well. And timeliness, Q6. So here we can see how many days after the date of the data. So for example, project start date, that's that date that client started in your program. How many number of days was it between the date that you recorded and the date that you actually went into the system to put that information in? And we'll talk more about this error as well. And then we have a count here of inactive records. If that's going on in your program, you'll see that under Q7. So again, this report is the one that we're asking you to turn into us, and it just has an overview of how many errors are there. It doesn't tell you anything about why they're happening necessarily or how to solve them. So that's what we're going to look at next. Remember to get that PDF, I clicked this report button down here at the bottom. But we also have this button that says Run Export. So this export button is what's going to give me client level information. For each of those sections that we just saw in the report, it's going to go into detail about exactly which clients those errors, exactly which clients have those errors, and a little bit of information maybe about why that error is occurring, but not necessarily. So when I click that Run Export button, you can encrypt the document, and you'll be asked to protect it in some way because, of course, it is client level data. The system will automatically ask you to create a password for that document so that it's password protected. Sometimes that can, be a difficult file to access, and if you want to, you can uncheck that encrypt export box, but then ClientTrack gives you a notification saying, hey, we're not responsible for how you use that data, and you will have to assume full responsibility of ensuring the security of the data inside of your file before it runs. So you can run the files this way without password protecting them, but what we would ask that you do is run that report, download it, read the errors, resolve the errors, and then go back and delete that file off of your computer, delete it from your recycle bin on your computer so that it's no longer sitting there and that data is no longer accessible to anyone. We also ask that you don't email us these validation files that we're about to run. Again, they do have client level data. They shouldn't be sent through a SpiceWorks ticket. They shouldn't be emailed to anyone because without that password protection. So I'm going to click done, and we'll get a notification that says your export has been queued and it's going to be processed at the next available time. So that validation file does take a few minutes to run. When I click OK on that notification, I'm automatically bumped over to this page called Files on Server. So You can get to this page on your own. It's right here in the menu at the very top, Files on Server, or you'll be bumped there anytime you run a report that's going to display for you on this page. You'll notice that obviously to get ready this morning, I've been running a bunch of different data quality reports, but we don't see the one that I just ran here at 11:22. If I click this link right here that says click to view, then I can see the status of that report that I've asked for from the system that hasn't run yet. So this page refreshes about every 30 seconds and it will show you reports that have been queued in the last 40 days. So after a while, these do go away. But here you can see that I've asked the system to start this data quality report. It hasn't started yet, but once it does, we'll get an update here. And then once it has completed, we'll see it on this list. One other thing to note from this task list for your queued reports is that one, you can see a task ID. So, I'm running all of these data quality reports and they all have really similar names, but I can go over to the task ID and help me identify that report if I need to distinguish between two different reports easily, or maybe you had an error with a report and you're sending in a ticket to get some technical assistance. That task ID is helpful. And with the action arrow next to that report, if you view the log, if there is any error with that report and what's being run, well, let me get one that actually has information. I'm sorry. And that back arrow does not take you back in the task list. It takes you back in client track. Let me grab this one because this one already has some information in the log. If there was any sort of error for this report, the error will display somewhere in this log. So being able to just copy and paste that information into the ticket where it says an error number or something like that is also really helpful. Any questions about running the report, downloading the report, or getting at least to this stage before I actually open up that client file? I feel like I'm going really fast. How are we doing so far? Everybody good?
Good.
All right. So let's take a look now at this validation file or this client level data. I'm just going to open up the most recent one. Let's see here. This green arrow will help you download the file, and then if you want to delete the file from the server, you can delete it here. Once you download the file, it's going to actually download as a zip because there are several different Excel spreadsheets in that one file. And it opened on my other screen. Give me just a second to pull it over here. So I just double clicked on the file to open it, and you can see that now if I go to my downloads, it'll be there as well, that zip file. My computer is running very, very slow this morning, y'all. It's been struggling. All these different files are part of that zip that I downloaded. This first one, the validation file, will give you a lot of different information for your various clients. So I'm going to just expand these tabs so we can read that information. I get a client ID, relationship to head of household, the date that the enrollment was created, and we'll come back to look at this in a minute when we talk about timeliness. We have the client's name, the quality of that name, social security number. As I scroll over, the quality of that, birth date and the quality of that. And as we continue, you'll see that there is just a lot of information in this validation file about these clients. So obviously just 2 clients are displaying on this report for now, but imagine you have 100 clients in your program or whatever that are displaying on this report. That's a lot of data to look through. I just want to point out a few things. We have Chronicity information here. And then if we keep scrolling over, we'll get information, let's see, about their enrollment date and exit date. And then as we go through, we'll get information about at start, at exit, and at annual assessment, some of those things that are pulling to that data quality report. Date of engagement also displays on this validation file. So we'll look at that in just a moment too and see how that affects the report. And then housing move-in date, if you're a housing program, that'll display on this validation file as well. And y'all, look at all this information. There's a lot of information here. Now's where we're gonna get into income, non-cash benefits for entry, and then for exit, and then for annual. That's all these fields. I know I'm scrolling really quickly. We're not going to read all of them. At the very end here, we get a little bit of information about whether that person was a leaver or a stayer, bed nights if they have any recorded. So again, validation file gives you a ton of information about your clients and can be really helpful as you're looking through and trying to figure out, why the error that you have might be occurring. I just want to open one more of these files now just to show you what it looks like before we go into detail talking about some of these different errors. And I'm actually gonna, maybe we'll get something if we pull the Q4. That income one is pretty common. No, I want to find one that maybe has some information in it. And if they don't, that's okay. I can still show what would be there. Here we go. So if you'll notice, each of these validation files corresponds to one of those numbers that we saw on our PDF, right? So we had Q2, and here we have a Q2 detail, Q3, and then a Q3 detail. So each of these individual spreadsheets is going to correspond to whatever section of that report the number is related to. This one is a Q6, so this has to do with timeliness. And let me just make it bigger here. We can see that we have one client and their entry and exit date was here, and there were no days between entry and exit. So if we go back and look at that PDF, we should not see any sort of error. Didn't look like that was showing an error. So let's take a look and just double check. If I scroll down to Q6, let's see. Well, I didn't see, oh, that's a different validation file. I'm sorry, y'all.
Megan, excuse me, Megan, so timeliness isn't an error that they need to address.
Right, we can't correct it. We're going to go into detail about that. I was just going to see if it would, they just aren't for the same program. I was going to see if we could see whether that one person was showing up or not, but they're two different. This report is an older one that I ran. That's not the one I just ran this morning, so I can't do that anyway. All right, so that's our validation file. Let me pull that back up really quickly. And again, each of these individual CSVs is going to correspond to some section of the data quality report. And the other CSVs down here that aren't detail files, I just want to show you really quickly. These ones that don't say detail validation, these are just that aggregate information that shows in the PDF is what's going to show in each of those for each section. All right, so now that we have run that report, we've looked at the PDF, we've looked at the validation file. Any more questions about that before we go into common errors?
You all, I just want to step in and make sure that everyone on the call understands how when you're looking at the PDF and you're seeing that one error, those two errors, say for question 4, that when you run this validation file, that you're able to go over there to Q4 and see, say, those two people. Again, we're training today because of all the tickets that we've received. And that has been one of the issues, is that people didn't understand how to go from this report, this PDF report, and seeing the errors and how that correlates to the validation files. So if you have any concern or any questions, please speak up now. It may be a question that someone else has, so that we make sure everybody understands how these two reports work together.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to ask your questions. And we're going to go through each of these scenarios that we have for common errors and look at both reports simultaneously. So hopefully as we do that throughout the meeting, you'll be able to see how those two correlate even more.
Megan, I have a quick question regarding the first quarter report and then
Sure.
preparing for the second quarter report. Like our agency had some under Q2, related to the Social Security number. We have some non-citizens who do not have a Social Security number. And I was just wondering, since we could not fix that issue in the first quarter, and if they're still enrolled in our program, will they show up again in the following data that we collect when we do the next report?
That's a great question. Hartfield, I'm going to let you take that one and speak to that because I know you've dealt with that a few times.
Yes. Okay. So Kim, whenever you have a client that legally does not have a Social Security number, we are asking you all, and have been asking you all, to submit that in a ticket to us with your clients' names that legally do not have a social, that are showing up as errors on your reports.
Okay.
Those are the only Social Security numbers that we are, what's the word I'm looking for? That are acceptable for us in terms of your data quality. But we don't know that if you don't submit that. So you all, when you're submitting your reports and you're seeing that say 2 of your errors are for Social Security and they're for clients that legally do not have a social, then in your ticket, when you submit those reports, then we need you to say client, and whoever their 2 names are, they legally do not have a Social Security number. That way we know that those errors are in a sense valid for us, right? In regards to the data quality reports, they're going to be continuous, right? You're not going to just run quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. You're going to run, when you guys get ready to run quarter 2, you're going to also involve quarter 1. So you're going to be running a report from January 1st until June 30th. All of that is going to be in your second report. So yes, you all, timeliness and missing Social Security numbers, those errors will continue to show up on each report that you submit. Again, this is where you let us know why those errors are still there, right? And we just go from there. But we need to know that they're legally don't have the social, and just know that as time goes on, what we're hoping to see is that those timeliness errors, maybe not Social Security number because we can't do anything about it if they don't have them, that those errors begin to lessen and decrease as your reports build each quarter, right? So we're hoping that the timeliness, yes, that may still be there if that client is still either opened or closed within that time frame. But as we go on, then that will hopefully get better as you guys do your timeliness 2-day entry. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone
Thanks
else
for your
before we move on?
question. Thank you. And Hartfield, while you were talking, I was actually adding that scenario and how you guys should handle that scenario to our handout. So when you get the handouts later today, that information that Hartfield just discussed will be on there as well. All right, so now we're going to jump in to the system and actually look at some reports and some errors and how we can resolve that error. So the first one that I want to bring up is one that we see a lot for this first section here, total number of persons served. This is more of a reminder, and this is not technically an error. This is just something that users bring up a lot, asking our team why this total number of persons served might not be the number they were expecting to see. So that can happen for a number of reasons. The scenario that I'm going to present right now is specifically for street outreach and emergency shelter programs. It could occur for other programs too, but not necessarily for the exact same reason. So for the data quality report, clients are only going to pull to this report for street outreach and emergency shelter programs if they have a date of engagement and a current living situation recorded. So I want to briefly show you right now my total number of persons served for this program is 1 on my data quality report. But I'm actually going to go really quickly and run a client and programs report for the same program for the same time frame. So my time frame is this whole year. I'll choose this year, enrolled at any point. So this will show me clients who are enrolled in this program at any point throughout my time frame. I'm going to scroll down and find my program. Here we go, the bridge outreach. I'm not going to add any other filters. I just want to grab this report really quickly. So you can see here, I've set this program up so that we have 2 clients, and they're showing on this clients and programs report saying, yes, this client has an enrollment in this time frame. We have 2. We have Bathroom Scale and we have Dextora. And both of these clients are here, but I might be wondering, okay, I see both of these clients, both of them have an enroll date in this time frame that I've run my data quality report for. Why are they not showing up? Why is this only one? Well, one of these clients does not have a date of engagement recorded, so they're not going to show up on that report. And if I open my validation file, let me grab that for this program. I believe it's this one. We'll see if I'm right. That's not the right program. I ran a bunch of these this morning, y'all. Oh, I named them. There they are. I knew I made it easier for myself than it had to be. Okay, let's open up this validation report. What you're going to see is that both of these clients are here on the validation file, but when we scroll over to that, trying to remember exactly which column it is over here, that a date of engagement has not been recorded for this first client, which is Dex. So you may see the client still on the validation file even, and that's what's displaying here. But you can see that because the date of engagement has not been recorded, that client is not showing up in the aggregate data. It's not going to pull any errors from this client because they're not being included in that information. And that's okay. Not every client in your program is supposed to pull to that report. The reason for that is the way that HUD holds you accountable for clients whether or not a date of engagement is recorded. So if you are a street outreach program and you're wanting to get more information about date of engagement, when you should record it, how you should record it, or how it affects these reports, then you can come to our street outreach training, which is happening next week on May 6th. But this is one kind of common thing that people are asking, you know, why doesn't my total number of persons served, I'm trying to pull this up again for you. Why doesn't my total number of persons served match even the number of clients that are showing in the validation report or the number of clients that I know are enrolled in that program? And the reason for that is that perhaps there is a required data element that hasn't been recorded. For street outreach and emergency shelter night by night, that's date of engagement. I'll backtrack. For street outreach, it's date of engagement and current living situation. Can happen for night by night emergency shelters too without current living situation. And for other program types, there may be other required data elements. Team, I didn't make notes on that. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. I know, Frida, you've been reading through all these reports recently. Are there other data elements for other program types that will affect the data quality report? No, see, you're shaking your head. Just this one. So if you are a street outreach program, that's a pretty common, it's a pretty common one. The next scenario that we want to, sorry, any questions about that one before we go on?
So real fast, Megan, let me just jump in here, you all. A lot of my street outreach programs were prior to today had been submitting tickets that had zeros, right? So nobody was showing up in their reports. And again, the date of engagement, you all to be reported, the date you engage with your client, and you all come up with some sort of housing plan to get them off of the street or into a shelter. So that is when a date of engagement, when you've engaged them and they're ready to work with you all on a plan, is when you do a date of engagement. That could happen during enrollment, that could happen later. So be sure that you are recording that date of engagement whenever that engagement with your client has happened. Where a lot of street outreach and our night by night shelters are missing that component within the workflow. And I just want to make sure you understand why you're putting that date there. Again, it will not pull to this report if for one, the date of engagement is not recorded. And so if you're getting zeros for your street outreach, but you know that you have engaged plenty of clients, then Megan will show you in the workflow where that date of engagement needs to be recorded. But that's just one part of it. She'll go into the current living, but even with the current living situation recorded, if that date of engagement still is not, then it definitely is still not going to show up on your report. So your date of engagement is your first step that you need to make sure is recorded with your current living situations.
Thanks, Hartfield. And in just a minute, we're going to open up one of these client files and we can point out where that date of engagement is. The next scenario, I'm actually going to toss over to Hartfield, but I'm going to keep sharing my screen, Hartfield, and just click as you talk about this error that is showing up here for income sources at start. So we're going to, first, let's go to the validation file and find, well, we already know because there's only 2 clients in this program and only one of them is pulling here. But let's go walk through how to find which client this error is showing for, and then we'll go into that client's file, correct this error, and we'll also look at date of engagement while we're in there too.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so you all, this section of the report is probably where I have gotten the most errors and have had to work through the most issues with. And again, some of it is just like making sure that the system is reading correctly, and some of it's just understanding what it all means, right? So income and sources at start, you all, means at entry, okay? So it's within your entry assessment for your program enrollment. And so we see that there's one person that has an income and sources at start, and we'll go over to the validation file and look at Q4 validation file to figure out who that one person is.
So here's my bridge outreach zip file that I downloaded. I'm going to open up DQ4.
So here, as you can see, it has the data element. That is what tells you exactly where the error is. So your error is at start. And it is for bathroom scale. It has the client ID. It has the enrollment date, the exit date, and the program name. So you're most interested in, okay, this is the start date. It's going to be for the street outreach program, and that's the client ID. So you're going to take that client ID and go over to HMIS.
Go over to my client's workspace, search for that client.
Okay, so once you get to your client, you're going to go down to that program enrollment where it says where the error is, and here's our enrollment, street outreach. You're going to select the blue action arrow next to the enrollment, and then you're going to edit your project entry workflow, because again, at start means entry, right? So we're going to edit our project entry workflow. You all, whenever you get in, just get into the habit when you are fixing errors in your reports, because sometimes there may be multiple errors across one client, right? So whenever you're going into these client records, it is our suggestion that you guys look through all of your information as you're going through the screens. So yes, I'm coming to this client to look at their income, but as you can see, there's no social security number collected. So I'm sure that client has showed up on the social security errors. And so if you're touching clients, you all touch them all the way across the board, right? This will help you to clean up data quicker without, okay, I'm only going to the income screen. Now I go back to this. Oh, it's a social security number. Now I'm going back to the client. So just go through each screen, you guys, and make sure that you're fixing the errors. And for sake of time, Megan, we can, I guess we could fix, so that one social security error is for our one client. And again, it has client doesn't know. So that's going to come up as an error in your reporting, and there's no social, right? So now this is where you want to put the social in. If your client legally does not have a social security number, please do not put anything in the social security number field and leave it blank. And then the correct answer is client doesn't know. Yes, it's going to be an error on your report, but that's why you're going to let us know that that's why it's an error. Do not put nines, do not put zeros, don't put anything, zero, make sure it's clear, and then just client doesn't know. So as we're going through each screen, we're going to fix the social security number. I'm going to fix the birth date. I'm going to fix the errors that I see as I go through. So we fixed that. We're going to finish and move forward, but that's not where I'm stopping, right? Because I'm not looking for the income screen. Here's my family member screen. You want to make sure all your family members there are selected, and making sure that there's an X next to all of their names. This is the screen, you all, that you go to if the family members aren't showing up. You want to make sure that they're there, and you want to make sure that they're attached to this program enrollment screen. And again, that's making sure that there is a check mark by their names. That is how you know that they're attached to this enrollment. So we only have our one client. We're going to no changes. So if you're going through those screens and you don't have any changes, you're just going to no change or save and close, depending on what the option is.
Hartfield, I'm just going to step in really quickly and say this is where you would record the date of engagement for your client if you had not recorded it before. So if you should have recorded it at entry, so say your client started your program and the same day you engaged that client and you began to create a housing plan, do a case management plan, something like that, these dates can match and you would record it here with the entry workflow. However, if you're recording this for later, so you can see here my client started the program on the 22nd but wasn't engaged until the 29th, you can record that as part of an update assessment because that didn't happen at entry, right? So it wouldn't be correct to go in and record it as part of the entry workflow. You need to record that as an update. Now, I am going to click no changes, Hartfield, and then you'll keep going. Sorry.
Problem. Okay, so we're going to just move here, make sure that all my universal data elements are great. And there's our disabling conditions. Those are all good. Domestic violence. Okay, so here's our income screen, you all. You're going to want to come to this income screen because it says that there's a reason for there's an error. So we have that there's no for sources and no for non-cash benefits. Can you scroll down, Megan?
I'm scrolling down all the way and nothing else is there.
Oh, okay. So you might get here and Megan, did you make the error for the date?
I made the error the master assessment date.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me tell you guys a little bit of where this income and sources at entry may occur. If you come to this screen on income and you see that everything's filled out, right? It says no, there's nothing for you to fill out. It may say income from sources is yes, and there's something selected. So if you get to this income screen, you guys, and you figure out that I don't understand what the problem is, I'm recording the income correctly. There's two things that I want you guys to pay attention to. This assessment date that you see at the top of this screen, this assessment date, you all, must match your project start date. For whatever reason, I cannot pinpoint right now exactly why this happens, but that date sometimes does not match, right? Those dates are supposed to populate whenever you, and it could be when you go in and make changes and you make updates, then those dates change. But every date, not just this screen, you all, but through your entire workflow, this assessment date needs to match your project start date. So as you're going through your workflow, be mindful to pay attention to the assessment dates that populate on every screen, right? So make sure you know what your project start date is, and make sure that as you're going through these workflows that those assessment dates, and the dates are not always called assessment date. It could be called assessment date. The other one will say date of assessment, whichever, as long as whatever dates are in this workflow matches your project start. So here, it doesn't have a different date, right? It's still 4/22. I believe that was the project start date. So, okay, the assessment dates I have figured out are the same with the project start date across the board, but I'm still getting the error, right? This is where I want to take you to step 2. So the first step, go through your workflow, make sure all the assessments dates are correct, get to your income screen, make sure that your income that is selected is also correct. Because sometimes I find that there's nothing in this field. It's blank. So you're checking for those two. Once you check and see all the way through your workflow that your dates match and your income is filled in, then I want you to look at the master assessment. So Megan, since your dates you said are already correct, if you can just save and close or no changes through the rest of the workflow.
Do you want to edit the master assessment from this page? We can.
Does that change if you do it from this page? Will it change it, say, if dates on other pages, will it change it there too?
It will not change the actual information date on the other pages, but it changes the master assessment date for the whole assessment.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can do the assessment active, but I'll also show you how to get there if you're not within this workflow.
Awesome.
And see, I don't go to it through here, but that is where you can get to your master assessment date, you all, and this is where you want to update your assessment date. So as you can tell, your date is still set at 4/29. This is why you are receiving the error on your report, not because of your workflow, right? Your workflow had 4/22, which matched, your income was there, but the master assessment date is wrong. So we need to go back and change that master assessment date to match the 22nd, and then we're going to save it. So you all, if you're within this workflow, you're going to click on that assessment active, edit assessment, and then change your a master assessment date. That's how you can do it when you're in the workflow, okay? And then you're just going to save and close. Make sure you save and close on that page and then move through. Yes, you're going to get this error, but you can save and close through it.
Yeah, so that's where I want to that's the reason I wanted to do it from the assessment first, because this error is coming from originally when the two dates didn't match, right? And this is the error you'll get. So in this scenario, I did the intake for the client on the day I engaged the client, which is not correct, but I did the intake on the day I engaged the client. And then I actually went back and edited this workflow and changed the project start date and changed all these assessment dates because actually my client started in my program on the 22nd. I just didn't engage them until the 29th. So I recorded all this incorrectly on purpose. And when you do that, when you go back and edit the project start date and then go through and edit all your assessment dates, this is the error you'll get the first time. And you can save and close through this error, but like the error is there for a reason. Read it, make sure that you're able to try to resolve it, even if the system is going to let you go through. So even though I've just edited this, when I get this error, I'm going to just double check again. Okay, this says 4/22. I know that's right. This assessment, master assessment date is 4/22. That's right. And so now I'll save and close knowing that the error is going to go away. But when you get it the first time and you come in and check that master assessment date and they mismatch, that's why that error is showing up. And so many people, I've seen a lot of people do this in training too. They'll go, oh, I got that error, but I didn't read it. And then they just save and close. Like, no, stop, read that error. There's a reason that the system is asking you to look at something before you keep going. So we will save and close, and then we'll run the report again, and we'll see that error disappear.
You all right here? Oh, we'll talk about current living later, right?
Yeah, we will.
Okay. So that's how you all, when you're thinking about making these changes and figuring out where your errors are, those are just the different things that you're going to look at, right? You're going to look at the assessment dates. You're going to make sure that the master dates match. Say you just save and close through this and you didn't pay attention to the error, so you didn't click on the assessment active, but you're still getting the error and you know that your dates in your workflow are correct. The other place that you can go to make this change is when you're on your client's dashboard, over on the left-hand side in your blue menu options, you're going to go under profile, and then you're going to click on, no, I'm sorry, scroll down. You're going to go to common assessments and universal data. From here, you are going to get a list of all of the entry and exit assessments, universal data assessments, annuals, updates. They're all going to show up there for this client, For this client, we just have an entry assessment, right? And so that is where we're trying to make the change. So when you are on this page, be sure that you're looking at the dates, right? The date that told you where your error was, and what assessment was it? Was it your entry, your annual, your update, whichever one has the error? For this one, it's entry. So you're going to click on the edit button. You guys won't have that trash can. That's an admin function. When you get here, you all see that date at the top where it's with like date, program type, user up at, yeah, right there. You're going to have to click on that little stick. I guess it's a pen. That again opens the master assessment page. There you're going to make your date is correct. You're going to save it, and you're going to make sure that both dates on that page match, and then you're going to save. So that is the other way that you all, if you're not within your workflow, that you can make sure that your master assessment matches those dates. And again, this is true, you guys, for start, annual, exit. So whenever you're having issues on Q4 with income, it's the same steps across the board. You're on your entry, your update, or your exit. Of course, you go to a different place on your auto action button. So if it's at entry, then you're going to edit the project entry workflow. If it's at annual, then you're going to go down to, are we there yet? Am I going too fast?
You're okay. We're gonna do the annual
Later?
in a minute for like if there's multiple annuals, but for the dates, we can go over that.
Okay, so again, you guys, this is where you're going to come to. So if it's in income and errors at annual or update, this is where you're going to come. So you're going to go to update annual assessment. This is going to take you to your HUD program enrollment screen. Everything's fine. You're going to no change through that.
And this is where you would enter that date of engagement if you were entering it for the first time, just by the way.
Yes. That shouldn't.
We don't have an annual yet recorded for this client, so.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you all.
We can
You
find,
do
I
on
can
the
pull
next
up a
example,
client that
right?
does. Yeah,
Okay.
I have another client that does.
Perfect. Okay. So let me stick to the script, you guys, moving forward. So for at
You're
start, that is what we're going to do for at start. Hopefully I didn't confuse everyone. Hopefully that wasn't confusing. If anybody is confused, please go ahead and speak up and I'll make sure that we clarify it. Is anybody confused at all?
Any questions? There was a question in the chat. What if the client's income while they're in your program changes? And that would be done as an update assessment. So you would follow the steps we actually were just going through. If maybe originally this client came into the program, they didn't have any income, but then, as they're receiving services from your program, they have now, maybe they've got some sort of income, some sort of benefits. You can go to your action arrow next to your enrollment, update/annual, confirm that all this information is correct, check your date of engagement, or if you're a housing program, this will be a housing move-in date. You'll want to confirm that that's correct. You can save or no changes there, depending on the situation. Then you would record that income as part of an update assessment. So you would click update, and then you're taken through the workflow where we can default to get the most recent information for that client, right? Maybe we want to pull in the most recently recorded health insurance information and then review with the client like, okay, most recently I noted that you didn't have any health insurance. Has that changed? If it hasn't changed, then we can just click save. We don't have to make any changes. Or if it has changed, then we can record that change as well and then click save. And we'll do that for each page. So disabilities, you can't change that. You can, if you've recorded no on the last page, then you're going to not have the option to select yes for any of these. So I'm not going to make any changes there. I'm just going to save and close. I can default here
As
to
Megan's
pull in the
going,
most.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say I can default here for the same thing to pull in the most recent information, but ask your client the question again. Don't just default and then assume that that information is the same. And I'll pause on the income page. What were you going to say, Hartfield?
Well, I'm just saying that we have a lot of new people coming in, and so you all update assessments are done when there's a change in circumstances, right? Non-cash benefits, income, disability, If any of those things change as you're working with your client, you're not going to go back and edit your entry workflow. Your entry workflow is whatever they were at entry. If a day or two later, that client comes in and they say, oh, I forgot my food stamp letter. I had food stamps when you entered me, then that's not an update, right? They just forgot to let you know that they had, say, food stamps when you did their initial intake. That's when you would just entry. But if they come to you a week or two later because they literally just got their food stamps and you helped them get them, then you're going to do an update assessment and you're going to record whatever the changes are to income, non-cash benefits, whatever the changes, you're going to do that on an update assessment. Okay. So I want to make sure you guys understand the difference of when to use both.
I'm going to quickly record this income, current living situation. I'm not going to go into details here today, and we're actually, I want to get through all of our topics, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this data quality report now for this same program. So let me go back to my reports workspace. Data quality report. I'm going to load those settings for the bridge that I had earlier. And when I run the report, we should see that income at start error go away. Give me just a moment. There we go. So now our error is gone because we edited that master assessment date. The next scenario I want to go over is timeliness, and I'm going to actually pull up that same report that we were looking at really briefly and go down here to our Q6 for timeliness. So, I told you guys what I did. I recorded the entry assessment for today, and then went back and edited the assessment and said, actually, this client started in our program on the 22nd. So Frida, do you want to talk to us a little bit about timeliness and kind of say more about what Hartfield was saying earlier, how this displays and how it's not an error we can really change? You're muted, Frida.
How about now?
You're good.
No? You're good. Oh, okay. I just want to start off by reminding everyone of the timeliness expectation for our continuum. And that timeliness expectation is 2 calendar days. And that went into effect on January the 1st. On January the 1st of 22nd, our timeliness expectation, it will be lowered to 24 to 48 hours. I believe I'll have to go back and confirm that. But as of today, it is 2 calendar days. That's the timeliness expectation. What does that mean? That means that clients should be enrolled in your program within 2 calendar days. Should be enrolled in HMIS within 2 days of starting your program. And clients the enrollment should be exited within 2 calendar days of the client leaving your program. Here, what you'll find, I also want to say about this data quality report, you all, the specs and how data pulls to this reports, this is all HUD defined. Okay, so there's HUD defines how this data pulls to the report. So in regards to timeliness, you see that there's a column that says number of project start records. And that is the number of records, right, that have been, that fall into each category, right? So 0 days, 1 to 3 days, 4 to 6 days, and so on. When you create an enrollment for the first time, there is on the back end a timestamp. And that timestamp is when that enrollment was created. We've talked about project start today. So when the enrollment was actually created versus the project start date, That is how we determine timeliness, right? How many days did it take you to actually get that client in, get that enrollment created in HMIS? And the time that passes in between the date created and the project start date, that is timeliness. That's how we determine timeliness. And the same thing for exit, right? When you exit an enrollment, there is a timestamp that happens on the back end. And the date that you actually created that exit enrollment versus the actual exit date and the time in between, that is the timeliness of when that enrollment was exited. So here you can see that Megan has the timeliness file for your data quality report, and you can see those columns here.
So there's the entry date, and here's the timestamp that Frida is referencing, that the date that entry was actually created. And you can see that it says there were 7 days between entry and exit. And that's why we have that 1 here on the 7 to 10 days.
And this
I'm
can't
sorry.
be changed. No worries, Megan. This cannot be changed, right? So the timestamp of when the enrollment was created and the timestamp of when the enrollment was exited, that's not something that can be changed. So it is of great importance that you make sure that you are enrolling clients in your program in a timely fashion and exiting those enrollments within a timely fashion, because you cannot change the project. You cannot change the date, the created date on the back end. And one of the questions earlier was about, will these errors, right, continue to show up on Q2, Q3, and Q4? And actually they will. If you had a timeliness issue at the beginning of the year, or let's just say in the first quarter, then that timeliness error is going to continue to be on your report throughout the year. So you want to make sure that you are meeting the timeliness expectation and enrolling your clients and exiting those clients within a timely fashion. And again, that is within 2 calendar days. And the last thing that I'll say is we are only focusing on, when it comes to timeliness, it is only in regards to when the enrollment was created, right? And when the enrollment was, it's only in regards to the project start date and project exit and when those enrollments were created and exited. This section of your timeliness report does not pull in any other data elements such as updating an assessment, right? So if you update an assessment, that's not going to affect your timeliness unless you have an issue with the date. So let me say that. If you're recording services, if you're recording other data elements like housing, move-in date, or living situation, those do not pull into this timeliness section. Anything else to add, team?
No, any questions about timeliness before we move on? All right, our next error that we want to look at, I'm actually going to close, we're going to go to a different program. And this is a different report, but I have a new error showing here. So this one is under Q4 as well, but this one is for income at annual assessment. So I'm going to pull up the validation file really quickly and just show where we can see that client. And then once we get to the client's record, I'll let Hartfield take that away as well. So for your own reference, here I can see the program that this report is for. So maybe you're running these for multiple programs and you're having trouble finding them. What I did is as soon as I downloaded this zip file, I renamed it for the program that it was for so I wouldn't lose it. And then I'm looking for, just as a reminder here, I'm looking for that Q4. So that's the validation file I'm going to pull. And when we open it up, we'll see exactly which client is having that error. Again, I'm pretty sure there's only one client in this program. Tried to make it easy for us to see. Here's our client. So I had really fun naming these clients this morning. Justine Timberlake. I thought that would sound funny to say on the on the call. So we're going to go find Justine, and then we'll look at that annual assessment and see why that error is occurring. So here's
Guys, we
what
have,
Hartfield and I were trying to show you earlier to get to that annual assessment and edit. We're going to go to our action arrow, update/annual, no changes here. There's that housing move-in date for our housing programs. And then edit existing. So this is what we were expecting to see earlier. We're going to actually edit an existing annual assessment, and there's 2 of them. So Hartfield, talk us through this.
okay, so you guys, this isn't always the issue, right? So great. There's so many different reasons why errors come up in the system. So fun, right? But could be one of their issues. And I did receive tickets where this was the issue. So what happens is, in general, having 2 annual assessments on your dashboard for the same year isn't a big issue, right? You shouldn't, right? An annual assessment should just be completed once within a 60-day time frame of your project start date. So that's 30 days prior and 30 days after your project start date is when the system reads an annual assessment has been completed for your client. So 2 things. If you have 2 annual assessments, as we do here for 2021, the issue is, are you getting errors in your reports for annual assessments, right? So 1 of 2 things could be happening, which is happening in this example. We have 2 annual assessments. One was done on the 25th and one was done on the 29th. They're both within the same time frame that is acceptable for an annual assessment. But just like, so the system pulls data from your latest assessment that the system can see. So for this, the 4/29/21 assessment is the latest assessment that was created. So the system is pulling all of the information from that assessment. So in this example, you all, okay, I got the error for income. I'm just gonna, obviously there's 2, so I don't know which one to look at, but I'm just gonna go ahead and look at the 4/25/2021. That was the original one. That was the one created. I may not understand, so I go through and I look at this. You're going to go through your workflow, you all, and check to double check that everything is correct. If it's correct, you're going to know change. The error was at income, so that's the page that I want to definitely pay attention to. So I come to my income screen and I see, okay, income from any sources, yes. Non-cash benefit is no. I come down. I see that there's other income selected for non-cash benefits. Is there anything selected for income?
It's selected under income, and there's nothing.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. So we have other income selected for your income. So scroll to the top. So we see that we said yes, and there is something selected, and our assessment date is correct. So, okay, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this assessment. Let's keep going through. But like I said, your assessment is going to be pulling from the latest one. So we're going to go back through here. And I'm now going to look at the 4/29 one, because this is the one that you're, I guess you could have started with that one. That's the one that the system is pulling from, right? So now we're going to go through this assessment and we're going to see if everything has been completed. So we work on our first screen, everything looks good.
And I'll say there was health insurance for this person and it's no here. So you would want to determine, like if you notice that those are different, you need to figure out why. I'm gonna click no changes for now for sake of time, but you would want to go back through the record and determine which one of those was accurate.
Okay, so now we're at income and sources. As you guys can tell, which is we're seeing a lot of, this second one that was created doesn't have income. And so the system is pulling from this annual assessment, which is showing that no income was ever recorded for your annual assessment. So what we are asking you all to do is you are going to, this latest assessment, you are going to go through it and make sure that it is up to date with all the correct information. So you are going to make sure that the income from any source, all of that stuff is filled in for your client, and then you're going to save it. There's no need for you all to submit us tickets saying, hey, I have 2 annual assessments. Can you please delete one of them? I know that visually, you all, from a case manager standpoint, because I've been there, visually, it looks janky, right? Like, okay, there's not supposed to be 2 annuals. My team has to get me out of that mindset sometimes, you guys, but I know where you guys are coming from. I know that it looks funny to see 2 annual assessments. What we want to make sure is that these annual assessments, your latest annual assessment for the year is correct, right? That is the biggest thing I want to stress to you all. So whenever you are getting this income at annual and you see that there's 2 annuals, go to the latest annual and go through the workflow and make sure that all of your information is correct for the client. Make sure the assessment dates are correct, right? That is still could be why the error. It could not be that you have 2 annual assessments. It could be that your assessment dates are off. So you're going to still follow the same rules that you did at entry. You're going to go through your workflow, making sure that your assessment dates match your annual assessment date. You're going to make sure that those match. You're going to make sure that that master assessment date matches your annual assessment dates. You're going to make sure all of that is correct. And you're going to make sure that your income and all of the rest of your workflow is filled in properly. So
I
for
really
the sake of
quickly,
time, I kind of
sweetheart
put that
Joe.
all together, Megan.
No, that's perfect. Really quickly, I just want to show everyone the way that I kept this blank was that when I got to this page, I paused the workflow. And we tell you guys all the time, never pause, never cancel a workflow. And this is why, because that paused workflow is that second one that is causing that error. So to prevent these errors, right, instead of having to do a bunch of data cleanup, make sure that you and that your users at your agency are going in and deleting those paused workflows as well. And when we delete that paused workflow, it's no longer in the system. I'm going to go to paused operations. Look at all these. It's a mess, you guys. I'm going to delete those workflows. And now I just want to go back to the client's assessments and see if that also resolves that error. Because that's a good way to just make sure that those errors aren't occurring at all, right? But if there are 2 legitimate, fully completed, then it's still there.
Yeah, it's not going to go anywhere because you got past that certain screen.
It's a bummer.
But you all, as we're moving forward, and maybe you're seeing that there are, as your data quality officer, right, you're looking at data across the board. So maybe as you're looking at client assessments, you're seeing that that your users are creating multiple annual assessments within the same year. So then that, as a data quality officers, lets you know that that's an issue within your organization and maybe some additional training needs to happen. So whether you send them back to us and we train them a little better, or you all are mindful of what that means and you train your users. But that's how we learn to not make these mistakes over and over, so that this data cleanup isn't so expansive every single time we're cleaning up data. So if you're seeing that there's more than one annual assessment, then please, there's an issue with your users, and maybe people don't understand how to look for those assessments. So Megan, can you just show them how you would quickly, from the dashboard, look at all the assessments that have already been completed for your client?
Sure. I'm going to go to the action arrow, click on that action arrow and click on associated assessments. And there
So
I
from
can see
here,
that
you
there was
all,
an entry assessment and 2 annuals.
absolutely. So this is where you'll be able to quickly see when you're going through people's, when you're going through users, or users are going through their caseloads, to see what assessments have been done. Because some people are just like, oh, an annual's due, and they just go do an annual without looking to see if somebody else happened to do that annual already. And again, if you didn't mean to do the annual, that wasn't your annual, you're not sure, go to your pause workflows, make sure that all of that is cleared out, and then come back to your dashboard, update that existing, and go through the workflow and make sure it's correct. So does anyone have any questions about income and annual errors and how to go about fixing them? Perfect. And if anyone,
Don't see
again,
anything
as
else in the
you're,
chat.
have something in the chat?
Yes.
No, I was saying I don't see anything else in the chat, but we will, that question about the report, Phil, I don't know if you're on or if you saw that. Is there a good report that we can pull to know when a client is due for an annual assessment?
Well, we could just query for when the intake was done. I mean,
Would
it's
you
on
have to
the,
do that through Data Explorer?
you could do it through Data Explorer. The APR should show the entry date as well.
If I could just add, you all, I'm just going to tell you one of my favorite reports is just a client enrollment report. It's you don't have to go through Data Explorer. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be queued up, right? It comes back right away. And Megan is going to show you where that report is. Megan, if you have it, it'll take
does
just a
clients in-
moment for it to come back. Clients in program, yes. And Megan, if you'll just select just one program, just so that we can see what comes back in that report. This is really simple. It's really simple. It's straightforward. If you want to know, who's enrolled in the program, when they enrolled. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it'll give you family members as well. So it's really straightforward. Just any one of those. Oh, I forget we're in the training site. And all you got to do is click on report, and you can see how quickly that comes back, right? And so if you'll just click on that positive sign, that's going to open that up for you. And then do you see the enrollment date, you all? That's the project start date right there. Tells you how long the clients have been enrolled in the program. So, right, maybe you want to come here and say, okay, who needs to be exited? I love this report just because, it may not give you everything it is that you need. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. But this is a real simple, straightforward report. And if I were you, if you want to know when to do annual assessments, this is the report I would probably go to because it doesn't have to be queued up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, as a case manager, part of your responsibility is going to be annual assessments, right? And as a case manager, as a data quality officer, you all will have to figure out the best way to keep up with when those are due, right? For me, when I was a case manager, I kept a spreadsheet that I checked often, that I would come in, that I would highlight on for the month, the ones that I knew were coming up. So then when they were done, they got changed to red or something like that. But you got to figure out your own ways of how to remember when annual assessments are due. If you are an organization that typically keeps clients for a year or longer, then you automatically already know that your caseload will have annuals coming up, right? So, again, it's just also learning different case management skills in order to keep up with that, because this just unfortunately the system's not going to be able to do everything for you, and it's not going to be able to say, hey, ding, annual assessments due for Justina Timberlake or whatever her name was. It's not going to tell you that. So annual assessments, you all were finding, are not being completed on time. And real quick, since we're running out of time, I want to make sure that you understand that if an annual assessment is not done within the time frame of the 30 days before the project start date or 30 days after, you will get an error for annual assessment. So you will need to make sure that your date for your annual assessment is within that time frame. So you may have to go in when you're doing this data cleanup and alter your date, because what happens is you may have thought it was due on the 25th, but it was actually due on the 29th. Because the 25th may not fall within that 30-day prior or after, you are going to continue to get an error for annual assessment. So I hate that that's how we have to make the changes. So that's why I want to make sure that moving forward, you all, that as agency and as data quality officers, that you guys come up with your protocol on how annual assessments are going to be created and in a timely manner. Because again, that's another way that you may get an error, is because the system doesn't read that an assessment was done if it's not within that 60-day period. And I've ran across that with a couple of people, and I believe they've made those changes and that has fixed their errors. Anyone
Thanks,
have any
Hartfield.
questions? You're welcome.
Really quickly, because we have like 4 minutes now, I want to, two things. You can also go to your home workspace, and then on the dashboard, if you just scroll down on that dashboard, you can see your case assignments, and these are the clients that you are These are clients that you have entered that you're assigned as the case manager in Client Track. So if you have that client on your case assignment, you can easily see their start date. There's a project start date here and as well as a begin date here to give you an idea of clients that, you know, you
Okay.
can look through that list and see what's there for that month.
Okay.
Before we close, because I also want to give you guys a chance to ask more questions, we did have one more error that I want to point out really quickly, and that is on the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the right one here. On the Q4 for destination, we have this one error. Frida, I'm going to introduce this, and if you want to add anything, certainly speak up. But we have this error here at destination, and if I pull up the validation file for that, hopefully I can find it pretty quickly. Let's see. I believe it's this one. If I go to Q4, here we go. So this client has a destination recorded at exit. So this is another one of those errors that doesn't seem immediately obvious how to resolve it. If I go back, I'm sorry, I'm going to grab this client ID really quickly. If I go back into the system and find this client in the system, take a look at their exit assessment and see what's going on. Why does this client have an error going on at exit for destination when they have a destination recorded? And already before I even open the workflow, I can see that the exit destination is no exit interview completed. So that is what we consider a valid error. The report will show an error anytime that the destination is recorded as exit interview completed. But Frida, in the last 2 minutes, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? When we expect to see this on the report?
I'll go through really quickly, Megan. What Megan said is that this is a valid error. So anytime that no exit interview is completed, HUD views that as missing information, right? So no exit interview completed is just like recording data not collected. However, it's expected for some project types, right? Like emergency shelters and street outreach programs. So what's most important, you all, at this is that the data is accurate and true for that point in time assessment. And so no exit interview completed basically means that the client up and disappeared. So that's fine. Some programs, street outreach programs and emergency shelters, you have auto exits that are enabled, which is fine. But if auto exits are enabled, that means that this data is not being collected at exit, right? And so therefore, in that auto exit, the exit destination is going to equal no exit interview completed, because that's the purpose of auto exit functionality, right? Is when, you know, clients up and disappear, you haven't had any contact with them, the system will auto exit them for you so that you don't have to do that. One thing that I do want to remind our emergency shelter and our street outreach programs is that we shouldn't let all enrollments auto exit. When you know where the client has exited to, or you were able to do a exit interview with the client, be sure to go in and exit that client and correct the information. Maybe the auto exit already kicked in, but you can go in and you can correct that exit assessment. That's very important, that we don't just allow all of the enrollments to auto exit. We should be manually exiting clients when we have the data to go to record. I also wanted to say about no exit interview completed is for our non-emergency shelter and street outreach programs. So our supportive services only, our housing prevention programs, our housing programs. Every now and again, you may have a client that up and disappears. So when you start your exit assessment, well, let me go back. You as an agency have to define after X number of days of no interaction with a client, when do you exit that enrollment? Then you will do your exit assessment. Your exit destination is going to be no exit interview completed. And for the remaining data elements, it is perfectly okay to choose default last assessment. That way, things, data elements like non-cash benefits and health insurance, they will pull from the last assessment that was recorded. Megan, I know that was long and we are at 12:31, but
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you. I was just going through and showing where those default last assessment buttons are, and that is what I did for this client. So this was recorded accurately. It's just still showing up as an error because that is the destination, and that's what HUD wants to see on that report. So there's no way you can resolve that or get rid of that error. We just want you to know that that's why it's there.
Real quick, Megan, before you move on from this topic, when you get this error, if no exit interview completed is already something that auto-populated for my street outreach and emergency shelters, again, there's nothing to fix, but you also may receive errors within exit, right? The income and sources at exit. Make sure that if it's because of this workflow, that you're not going in and trying to fix that income, right? These two are errors that are going to work simultaneously. So as long as you know that that's a valid no exit interview completed because you auto exited it, do not worry about going back through and trying to complete this workflow to get rid of those errors, right? What Frida is saying about defaulting last assessment is if you're literally physically exiting your client and you're going through the workflow, that is when we want you to default the last assessment, but choose no exit interview completed. So I want to make sure that we understand the difference so that you guys aren't going back trying to fix these errors when it auto-populated to no exit interview completed, right? But if you, as a housing program, you're the one that actually put this exit workflow in there, then yes, we are expecting you to fix those errors within your workflow. Is that clear? Was that clear? Okay. If it wasn't, you guys, like Megan said in the chat, sorry we didn't have time for questions. But if you want to send a ticket in and you have any specific questions, we will definitely help you from there.
And I'm happy to stay on and field questions. I just want to honor everyone's time. I know we ran a couple of minutes over, so we really appreciate you guys joining us for this office hours. I'll be available for the next few minutes. I'll stay on until everybody else is logged off. If you want to stay on and ask questions, or if you want to see me run through a certain other scenario in the system, I'm happy to do that. But otherwise,
I'll
there
stay
are
on
links
as
in the
well.
chat. Thank you, Hartfield. There are links in the chat. If you would please log in for training. And then if you would like to give us feedback, we always appreciate that. And otherwise, we hope that you all have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe in the rain and the storms that are happening right now. And thank you guys again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Is this training when you do the sign in, is it called the remote data quality training or what's the title?
It'll just be HMIS office hours or remote HMIS office hours. Candace, I
Okay.
don't remember if it says remote in front of it or not. I'm sorry.
There's
one of those
one
two.
for both. Does it matter?
Okay, you can do
Just
remote
put
then.
remote. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't clarify.
No, that's okay.